Good morning and welcome to a special Earth Day Children's Chapel from the Unitarian Society of New Haven Distance Learning Religious Education program. My name is Jesse Greist. I'm the Director of Lifespan Religious Education, and I'd like to start with a song that the adults will be doing in their worship this morning. It's a song that I wrote a couple of years ago, and it's called The Web of Life, and it's a round, so I'll sing it through 2 times. And if you get the words, go ahead and sing along with me. It goes like this. The web of life is all around us, lifts us up, and it surrounds us. We are one, though we are many, finding voice where there wasn't any. One earth home, one earth home. La telaraña de la vida está completa sin herida. Somos una voz unida, somos una gente querida, una tierra, una tierra. The web of life is all around us, lifts us up, and it surrounds us. We are one, though we are many, finding voice where there wasn't any. One earth home, one earth home. La telaraña de la vida está completa sin herida. Somos una voz unida, somos una gente querida, una tierra, una tierra. We're going to light our chalice out here. This is a special windproof chalice. We're going to light this with words that we say often at in our children's chapels, so if you know them, please say them with me. We light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. And now is the time in our children's chapels when usually we take a moment to just be present with the people around us, to check in and share our joys and our concerns. So at this time I'm going to invite you to find people in your family, brothers, sisters, parents, aunts, uncles who you might be sharing a house with. You can even call somebody that you are thinking of at this time and share with them the joys in your life, the concerns in your life. I ask you at this time to pause the video and start it again when you are done. Welcome back. I hope you did some good sharing in your families. I wanted to begin our worship service today with what I call a body prayer. This land that I'm standing on right now is actually the place where I grew up. It is a pond that is currently managed by the Boy Scouts, but it's the place where I grew up, and these are kind of the places where I grew up swimming in this pond and hiking around in this area. And there's a question that formed in my mind as I was growing up here, and that question is, what can we learn from? So let's begin. What can we learn from the trees? We can learn from the way they dip down their roots in the ground and bring up all the goodness of the earth, while at the same time stretching their branches up to the sky to receive energy from the sun. What can we learn from the water? Water is still and quiet until gravity gets a hold of it. And then it moves and bounces along. Move with me and flow with me now like the water as it makes its way along a stream. When it hits a rock, it simply bounces around that rock and moves on its way. What can we learn from the clouds? The clouds fill themselves up with all this water that rises from earth. And they fill themselves up the way that we fill ourselves up with knowledge when we learn. And they grow bigger and they swell. And then, just the way that when we have all this knowledge in our heads, the clouds, when they cannot hold any more water, they begin to rain. And that rain is like the way that we share what we learn as Unitarian Universalists with each other. And finally, I ask you, what can we learn from the earth? The earth holds every element, every chemical, every piece of the universe can be found inside the earth. Everything that is needed to live. So the answer is quite simply, what can we learn from the earth? Everything. Today I wanted to share with you about 3 of my Earth superheroes. This Earth Day, one of the things that I've been thinking about is how normally on Earth Day, it's a time when people get together. They come together to celebrate. Here in Hamden, there's always a big celebration in the schools, and people come together to learn about Earth and to learn new ways that they can care for the Earth. But this year, we are far away from each other. This year, we find ourselves in our own homes. We find ourselves with family, friends, but separate from large groups. The Earth is trying to teach us something this year. So I think about the people who have been my teachers, my inspiration on Earth Days past. One person who comes to mind, who is often mentioned in Unitarian Universalism, is a Unitarian whose name was Henry David Thoreau. Now, Henry David Thoreau is famous for many things. He was against slavery. He was against war. But one of the things that we think about when we think of Henry David Thoreau is the fact that he, for 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days, lived next door to a pond kind of like this in Massachusetts, called Walden Pond. And he stayed out there by himself and thought and listened and reflected and wrote about how important it is to be in nature and connected to nature. Unitarians these days and Universalists these days talk about a 7th principle. The 7th principle is respect for the interdependent web of life, and recognizing that we are all a part of that web. Well, another person who I think really understood that lesson, her name was Julia Butterfly, and she is still alive today. She lives in California. But one of the lessons that she taught me was when she saw that a company was going to chop down lots of trees, and these trees, you have to imagine, are about twice as big, some even 3 times as big as the trees you see behind me here, and twice as thick, 3 times, 4 times as thick. And she saw that this company was coming to chop down the trees for wood. And you know what Julia Butterfly did? She climbed up into one of those trees. And she lived there for more than a year. She and her friends stayed in those trees, and they stopped the company from coming and chopping them down. She knew that those trees were such an incredibly important part of the web of life that allowing them to be chopped down would affect far more than the tree. It would affect all the life in the forest. There's one more person I want to talk to you about today. He's somebody who I just learned about this week. His name is Dr. John Francis. Now, Dr. John Francis, when he was a young man, he was hanging out one day in San Francisco, watching the Golden Gate Bridge, a place that you might have seen or heard of. And Dr. John Francis, who was not a doctor at that point, he watched as 2 large ships carrying oil crashed into each other. And that oil came flowing out of the ships and covered all of San Francisco Bay. Well, Dr. John looked at that and he said, "This is a terrible accident. But you know what? I'm partly responsible for that accident because I'm a user of all that oil. I'm somebody who drives a car. So you know what? I'm going to stop." And from that day forward, Dr. John Francis completely stopped using any kind of car. For 22 years, John Francis walked wherever he needed to go. When he wanted to go to college in Oregon, he walked all the way to college in Oregon. When he wanted to go to graduate school in Montana, he walked all the way to graduate school in Montana. He walked from the west coast of the United States to the east coast of the United States. It took him over 2 years to do it. But there was something else. As Dr. John Francis thought and thought and thought about ways to take care of our earth and to take responsibility for what he was doing as a human on earth, he thought to himself, when I talk to people about what I believe in, oftentimes I am just waiting for my turn to speak. In fact, when I have a conversation with somebody, and you might think that this is something that happens to you too, sometimes we all catch ourselves. When we're talking to somebody, we know what we want to say. And sometimes we just wait for our turn to speak until that other person stops speaking, and then we say what we wanted to say. And later we might realize, you know, I wasn't actually listening very hard to what the other person was saying. So Dr. John Francis thought to himself, I am going to take a break from talking. For a while, I'm just going to listen. And he would walk, and he would teach, and he would communicate with people about how his thoughts and about how we can take care of this earth, but he did not open his mouth. At first he thought he was going to do this for 1 day. Then he thought 2 days. Then he thought maybe I'll do this for a week. But you know what? Dr. John Francis did not speak for 17 years. During those 17 years, he wrote books. He taught classes using only signs and writing. And so when I learned about Dr. John Francis, there were 2 things that came to mind that I wanted to share with you. 1, every single one of us has a part in deciding what happens to the entire earth. If we see something that's wrong or that's a problem with the environment, with anything on with climate change, etc., we are the ones who can start change. It may not seem like we can change the whole world, but making one small decision, one change in our behavior, maybe today I will decide not to use my car. Maybe I don't need to use it today. But that doesn't mean that tomorrow, maybe I will need to use it. But if I cut out one trip in my car, that might make a difference. If I see one person about to cut down a tree unnecessarily, I might talk with that person. I might stand in front of that tree and save that one tree, like Julia Butterfly did. And if I have a chance or choice between sitting at home, maybe watching television or watching YouTube videos, except for this one. This one's great. I might make the decision, today might be a day when I take a walk out and revisit a pond from my past, from my childhood, and listen to the birds and watch the movement of the wind on the water. That might be the way that I take care of Earth today. And I invite you to think about ways that you might do the same. So, we have one final song. The song is actually a video that I made before. It's a nice song, and I hope you'll sing along with it. It's called That Web, and it's going to start right after this video ends. So I'm going to extinguish our chalice, and I'm going to give great thanks to the earth for this beautiful day, to my son Cedro and my wife Sandra for helping me make this children's chapel, and to all of you for watching it. We will extinguish this chalice, but of course, while we extinguish it, we do not extinguish the light of truth, the warmth of love, or the energy of action. These live in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you, friends, and happy Earth Day.
That web, that connected web, that web, that connected web, that web, that connected web. It's the web of life. The water's connected to the soil's connected to the tree roots connected to the leaves. It's the web of life. That web, that connected web, that web, that connected web, that web, that connected web. It's the web of life. The leaves are connected to the herbivore's connected to the carnivore's connected to the soil. It's the web of life. That web, that connected web, that web, that connected web, that web, that connected web. It's the web of life. Insects connected to the flowers connected to the fruits. The fruits are connected to fruit salad. It's the web of life. That web, that connected web, that web, that connected web, that web, that connected web. It's the web of life. Everyone's connected to everything. Everything's connected to nothing. Nothing's connected to the songs, and it's the web of life.